Hello there. Welcome once again to another episode of Weird Music, the show where we take a look at the peculiar and unusual albums of the world. So today we're going to look at something arguably a little bit more accessible than what we've been exploring in the past few weeks. This one today is a dark gothic experimental folk album that takes the singer-songwriter concept and it drowns it in this incredibly dark, harrowing experience. We're looking at the debut album from Elizabeth Anka Vajagic, the wonderful Stand with the Stillness of This Day. So, like most of our videos, or at least the ones I remember to do this on, we're going to ask ourselves, who is Elizabeth Anka Vajagic? Well, Vajagic is a singer-songwriter from Montreal, Quebec, a singer who's appeared on a number of experimental records, ranging from Pas Chic Chic's Au Contraire to the last three Land of Kush albums, Monogamy, The Big Mango and Sand Enigma, as well as a couple of Shalabi Effect records as well. And Vajagic is this really powerful singer with an incredibly dark, moody voice that expresses so much emotion when she just belts out these amazing vocals. And on here, her debut solo record, we really see Vajagic delving deep into gothic folk notions and pushing out this wonderful album that traverses such tragically cold backdrops. So joined by a number of guest musicians, Stand with the Stillness of This Day takes Vajagic's haunting vocal style and it sets it to this dark, moody, skeletal backdrop of reverb-drenched guitars. You've got haunting string sections, moody drums that are pushing the tracks along at this very glacial pace. It all culminates in this it's so cold, shivering, just album experience. The album's also boasting a huge number of guest musicians, including the wonderful Becky Foon on the cello. Godspeed You Black Emperor's Ephraim Manuel Menick performs piano, voice, harmonium, and even guitar on one of the tracks. And of course, a favourite here at Weird Music, the album even has a guest spot for the wonderful Sam Shalabi, playing none other than the Oud, of course. But with all the guest musicians as well as the band that helps back up Elizabeth's music, they all help, create this wonderful framework to help elevate Vajagic's music. And they bring so much out of her vocal style where she's crooning and moaning with such beauty and precision. It's, as well as that, she's got such truly wonderful songwriting at play here. And at the forefront of everything, all the skeletal, empty, dark, sparse music, you've got Vajagic herself, whose vocals stand out so brilliantly among all the skeletal instruments here. It's a wonderful record, so cold, so just shivering. It's got so much presence to it. It's very good, very good. So, although this record seems to draw from typical conventions of the singer-songwriter genre, where Vajagic is, writing the songs, singing the songs, etc., etc., there's so much more at play here than what you'd get on a conventional singer-songwriter album. There's this very dark gothic mood to the whole album, making it feel so cold and impenetrable. And it's as though each of the songs are surrounded by this thin layer of frost that makes it all twinkle and glisten in the light, so beautifully, and yet it still feels so incredibly cold to the touch. And all that's expressed in the music itself, which is slow, moody, and yet it expresses Vajagic's creative intentions so perfectly. She's done a wonderful job of tapping into this dark and gothic part of her brain and pushed out some wonderful songs that perfectly capture a sense of this very, very unsettling world. So we've got a number of standout songs on this record, with the whole thing offering it's a very varied album experience where it all ties into gothic folk notions of darkness and moodiness and stuff. The album opens up with the track With Hope's Lost, which is a sprawling composition that sees Vajagic really pushing her vocals to tremendous effect. It places us right in the centre of this icy cold gothic graveyard where the statues loom over us with these frozen, terrifying faces. The album then leads into what is arguably my favourite track on this record, the beautiful Around Here, which is another sparse, hollow-sounding lament to loneliness and those empty feelings. And man, the track just gets me every single time when Vajagic just howls out the chorus of how can such happiness end. It's so cold, so moody, dark and depressing, but there's something so beautiful about it. Moving on, we've got the track Iceland, which, it pushes forward with this very low-end strings section that carries such incredible weight of power and emotion. And then in the chorus of that, the strings lift it all up into this beautiful place, and it just goes so well with Vajagic's vocals again. It's so good, so good. Then another favourite of mine, And the Sky Lay Still, features the wonderful Sam Shalabi. He's just shredding away on the oud there like he does, on so many of his records. And it just creates this incredibly dark and unsettling atmosphere. And that's before the whole album ends with the wonderful Sleep with Dried Up Tears, which is a beautiful, sad, slow acoustic number that just ends this album on a very beautiful, yet very dark note. So what's wonderful about Vajagic across her entire career is that we've seen her contribute some phenomenal parts to other people's works and albums. This is especially true on the Land of Kush albums, which usually feature a plethora of different vocal performances. But I have to say, especially on Monogamy and The Big Mango, that Vajagic's contributions, the songs she performs on, they're particular highlights of those albums. She just has this wonderful vocal that just much presence, so much, it just comes right out at you. It's so good. And there's a wonderful collaborative effort on all of those albums, and it's wonderful to see Vajagic incorporating many musicians from the local noise and improv scene to now help contribute to her own music. She's even managed to rope in the wonderful Sam Shalabi here, who really spearheads those Land of Kush albums. And it's all resulted in something very peculiar and very different that really stands out in its own right. It's peculiar because it's a record that seems oddly buried amongst Constellation Records' catalogue. You've got so many albums to explore there. You've got Godspeed You Black Emperor, Do Make Say Think, Fly Pan Am. There's so many artists to explore, and yet hidden away in that entire discography is this little album, Stand with the Stillness of This Day, just right there, bang in the middle. And it's an album that it feels like a little hidden secret in that catalogue. And it's one that's so beautiful and so wonderfully rewarding in its own right. And with that, I believe we've come to the end of today's episode of Weird Music. Another bit of a short one, but that's fine. We did do an incredibly long one in episode 13. What we've got here is the dark, foreboding folk album experience with some of the most powerful vocals you'll ever get from Vajagic. I remember when I first started exploring Constellation Records, which was well over a decade ago, and Stand with the Stillness of This Day was one of those albums that really stood out to me, especially because of that, very cold, dark album artwork. And, across all those years, it's one that's really stood with me for so long. It's, like I say, a little hidden secret buried under the plethora of albums Constellation Records have released. And, whilst Vajagic has continued to contribute many vocals to many different albums over the years, this is, essentially one of the only solo album releases she's done. There is an EP release also on Constellation Records, which has a very long song in it. But, there's not much else she's done in terms of her solo work, so whether or not we'll ever get to see anything else from her is entirely up to her, of course. We'll just have to see. At the very least, though, at least we have this very, very lovely, dark, depressing, wonderful album experience that, fans of stuff like Silver Mount Zion will most probably find a lot to like with this. It's that same sort of moody, dark, slow, glacial music. And so with that, we're at the end of today's episode. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. I hope you go out and check out Elizabeth Anka Vajagic, both her solo releases and the many collaborations she's done with so much of, the Canadian improv scene. Like, there's so much out there that she's been a part of. For now, though, I wish you all the best. You take care, and bye-bye for now. Bye-bye.